That's right. It is the classic theme from the 90s of our childhood. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to talk X-Men 97. And Dan, you have pulled off the marathon of the century here. So you have watched all of season 1
Yes, I have.
all of season 2 in what time frame now? Like 4 or 5 days?
No, like 2 days. Like 2 days. I watched two. Yeah, a few out. Like today, I was halfway through episode 3 of season 1 when I started watching today. I watched 2.5 episodes yesterday, and the entire rest today. That was my journey, you know. And
definitely.
Wow, what a journey it was.
Dan, you were probably a little past the animated series age-wise. Is that a fair assessment? You were probably what, just a little past that, or did you watch the animated series?
I did watch it, but not religiously. To give you a frame of reference, I graduated high school in 1997. So that is the age range. So I was a high school senior. I guess there was no 97 season, right? That would be the thing.
No, it would, yeah. So it ran through 96. It ran through fall of 96, which I would have been in 6th grade at the time, something like that. So I would have been it ran through fall of 96 and then picked up in 97 is where we picked up. So that's I did watch it religiously. Like this particular show is why I quit elementary school soccer. Like I did not want to miss X-Men, so I quit soccer so I could watch X-Men every Saturday. You know what I mean? And there was other stuff too. I mean, we had Batman the animated series and Spider-Man. There were other reasons, but
mostly shows.
Mostly nerd cartoons that were looked at as little kid stuff. But I was just a nerd. So, but so you really didn't have a huge frame of reference for everything moving into X-Men 97. So this is. You had a glancing reference, but not as much as a lot of the other people who kind of grew up watching the show. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, like I was a little older. Say that ran for 5 years, ending in 96. So right, so it started in like 91, 92, right?
92.
So that would have made me like 11 or 12 when it started. So like perfect age range. For the first season.
When I was 9. Yeah, when I was 9 is when it started, I want to say. So, because if it ended in, I think it ran for 5, ends in 96, that's 91. 1991 makes me 10, and I turn 11 in late August. So 10, 11, like the first few seasons. Plus, I was a comic nerd. I actually started being a comic nerd in this time, like Spider-Man number 9 was my entry point. That was my gateway drug to becoming a comic nerd. So I watched. I may not have got the last season or so, because by that time I'm a junior in high school. So the few seasons I might have tailed off, but I did watch the first ones religiously. I will. While we're on years, though, I got to ask a technical question. Should this really be X-Men 97 season 2, or should it be X-Men 98? Technicalities, what are we going to do with that? Technicalities, I guess, right?
Yeah, because they're treating the old series like it was a year for every season.
But it really takes place in ancient Egypt, so shouldn't it be like 1597 BC or something? I don't know. So anyway, we'll.
Is this X-Men or is this a Taylor Sheridan thing? Is this a Yellowstone series? Is that what we have now? Do we have 1823 and 1923?
Oh my goodness. This is great. All right. So let's just go ahead and talk. So just based on the reference of this show. All right. Let's not bleed this over the fact that they went back and got several of the voice actors and they got several of the writers and that they got comic book people that were in charge of being the showrunners and storyboards and all that kind of stuff. Let's actually just talk about what we see from this show. What is your reaction to seasons 1 and 2 of X-Men 97, Dan?
Okay. True confession time. I've got this t-shirt because I think my kids bought it for me one time at Walmart. I am a huge Deadpool fan, so I have my Wolverine popcorn bucket for DP&W right over here. But, revoke my nerd card if you want to, but I am not and never, ever have been an X-Men guy. I'm just not. They don't do it for me. They just don't draw me in. Maybe it's because I'm an only child. Maybe it's because I'm a little antisocial. Maybe because deep down, I'm kind of an asshole, right? But the X-Men are very much about yearning for acceptance and finding your people and wanting to fit in. Now, I don't want to misportray myself. I mean, look at this office. You can probably tell that I'm a fairly nerdy guy, so I'm not trying to project that I was Mr. Popular. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the villain in a teen sports movie. You know what I'm saying? I'm not that, but I've always fit in exactly as much as I want to fit in, which is to say not very much. And that doesn't bother me. So I think that's why the X-Men never really, it's just not my thing. I just don't get drawn into it. I do like team books. I love the Fantastic Four. I love the Avengers, the Justice League. Back in the day, I read Young Justice religiously. My boy Tim has been done wrong by DC. I want to throw that out there while I'm talking about them. But just the X-Men, in spite of I was an outcast among outcasts. See, I don't need to fit in anywhere. I'm at the comic book shop in 1992, and I'm the only guy who doesn't care at all about the next X thing. I didn't care. I didn't want to read it. No X books ever made my pull list. So go ahead.
That's kind of the difference between us. The X-Men was my origin into nerddom. It was what introduced me to superheroes ultimately, so yeah. I started reading the Uncanny X-Men when I was 7 and I really enjoyed those runs of the comics, those Claremont runs. I actually really enjoyed those when I was 7. They were very, very easy reading for someone that was young, which is what I really liked about it. And the storylines weren't too hard to follow either. There usually was one main bad guy, and each issue was fairly episodic. You usually had 4 or 5 good guys against 4 or 5 bad guys, and it all compiled into one big battle scene at some point. It was a very, very good run, and I appreciated what they did with that run. As a kid, because I read them from the time I was 7 to the point where I was about 17, 18 is kind of when I stopped reading those X-Men runs. So I really appreciated them. And then when it came on in 1992, that was just it was a whole different thing for me, because these characters that I'd been reading in kind of a flat way had been given personality. They had been given voices. They had been given complete and total changes from what I had been reading them as, and they kind of developed their own little style. And I really grew to appreciate that. I really grew to love the X-Men based on that. Now, the thing about the animated series and why I think it appealed to a younger audience like I was at the time is the same reason as those Claremont runs. Each particular show was like its own little episodic thing. You didn't have to have any frame of reference, really. You didn't really need to remember what happened before. They did have some 2 or 3 part series that they had, but they didn't really have anything that was a long, drawn out, connected one to the other story. It was all fairly episodic, and that's what I really liked about it, right? It's like I know everything I need to know about these characters in order to understand this story. All right. And that's what made it so great. And there didn't need to be any weird connectivity. They didn't have to have any vague references. They didn't have to reach back and pull forward and foreshadow into things they were going to talk about 3 episodes from now. That wasn't anything that they did. And me personally, that's what X-Men 97 does that I don't really care for. X-Men 97 is playing a long game and trying to make the story one big umbrella story instead of an episodic story where each episode is kind of its own thing. And look, I'm 43 years old. I can handle it. Okay. But that's not what the X-Men animated series was. And that's not why the X-Men animated series was popular. So it's very, very interesting. If you're going to do that, you have to have a storyline that is very linear and easy to follow so that if you miss an episode, it's not like you missed everything. If you miss one episode of X-Men 97, it's like you're thrown completely down the stairs. You don't know where you're picking up. You don't know where you left off. You don't know what happened. I mean, you and I were talking, Dan. We watched every episode of this thing, and we were lost at points. What did I miss? What did I
I watched every episode of the first season, pretty much, minus the first 2.5 today in a row without a stop, right? And I would say watching this show, the best analogy, at least the first season, the second season is a little different, but watching the first season of this show is like going to a concert where you've never heard any of the songs befefore. Yeah. Now, for those of you that are concert goers, or not concert goers, when you go to a concert, you never realize how terrible and completely unintelligible the vocals are at a concert until they play a song you've never heard. when they're playing your favorite song that you've known for years and that you sing and along to on the radio.
Singing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it sounds perfect. You're filling in the gaps with what you already know, and it sounds amazing, and you don't know that it sounds perfect in your head because you're filling in the gaps from memory. But then when they're like, oh, here's one off the new album, or if somebody dragged you to a show where you don't really like this band, you know what I'm saying? If one of those things, or you're listening to the opening act, and you didn't really know them. When these things happen, then you realize, oh, wait, you can't understand a single word. This is not the same as somebody sitting in the room with me singing a song. This is totally different. I don't understand anything. That's how I felt watching the first season of the show. I felt like the only way it makes sense is if you've already read the comics that it's based on, you've already read them at least 3 or 4 times, you know them by heart, and you're enjoying seeing them put into this format, because this was like a greatest hits album. It actually wasn't even like a greatest hits album. It was like what Elvis used to do. It's like a greatest hits medley. You know what I'm saying? They're not playing the whole song. They're playing a piece of it. And if you don't already know the song, you're wondering why we're into this next song already. It doesn't track. It doesn't make sense. I'm going from one episode to the next and going back again to be like, how did we get from where we were to where we are? Like, did I miss something? Was there a post credit? I texted Tim when it made from episode 9 to episode 10 in the first season. Episode 9 ends. Magneto's been stabbed through and through the chest by Wolverine, right? That's not fatal. Reasons. I need Disney. More and better. Disney. Yeah. I need more and better techno babble out of my comic books. You know what I'm saying? I need explanations. Even if they're techno babble explanations, I need it acknowledged that this shouldn't be possible. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, Magneto's been stabbed through and through. He doesn't die. Instead, he rips the adamantium out of Wolverine, and Charles is over here on the ground, and Magneto has his helmet magnetically forced onto Charles's head so that Charles can't use his telekinesis to get in his head, right? Episode 10 starts. Charles is already in his head. We're in the physical, the mental astral plane. They're in a flashback, and Charles is in his head. And then we get a flash to reality where Charles is holding on to Magneto. The helmet's nowhere to be found, and they're locked in this battle of mental struggle. And it's like, what, how did this happen? How did we get here from where we were there? I don't understand. You know, and that's not the first time that had happened. You know, I'm checking AI. Am I supposed to recognize this guy? Was this a big reveal or not? Mr. Sinister says that what's the big bad's name? I already forgot, Tim. The
Bastion.
Yeah. Sinister calls Bastion because he's like, you guys have been trying since 92 and you couldn't stop them. You're all failed villains. And Sinister says, well, you were one of us too. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to know this guy when he's I didn't know this guy, and neither did the X-Men. And I'm like, why did Sinister say that? He said he was one of the people, but he wasn't one of the people. Well, he's loosely connected to the other Sentinels, and that makes him part of the. I'm like, what? No.
See, and I can kind of forgive a little bit of that on the series, just because, you know, when you're dealing with an animated series and you're dealing with a limited number of episodes, and you've got, you know, people that have 20 years of storylines that they never thought they saw, that they want to get like in, because they don't know that this could be the only season for this, as far as they know. You know,
right.
What I mean? So
that's
they
what
want to cram it all in. They want to cram it all in.
All the stories.
It's the Spider-Man 3 problem, right? It's like, this could be the last one, and we don't know. So let's just get it all in. Let's get Mr. Sinister. Let's get Mojo. Let's get Bastion. Let's get Gyrick. Let's get Magneto. Let's get everybody in here, and then we're gonna have just in case they don't pick us up again, we at least got all of this stuff in, and that's what it felt like to me as well. So I can understand, even though I disagree with it in execution, I can understand where they came from with that. Some of the stuff that bothered me probably isn't the stuff that bothered you, Dan. And
can I do my worst one?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
They spent plenty of time deeply establishing how sad everyone was that Charles is dead, right? Everybody's sad. Everybody's disappointed. Nobody knows what to do. Episode comes. Bastion broadcasts on television the engagement announcement of Charles, the Shi'ar Empire, which that little subplot was just unbearably dull. I don't need your outer space adventures, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like
that was just a way to introduce Gladiator and a few other characters. That's really the only
but do we need the Shi'ar Kree subplot? Do we need that?
No.
Anyway, that broadcast on TV, the X-Men see it. Not one of them goes, oh my God, Charles is alive.
Yeah.
No, the reaction is just, I think it was Wolverine said, Bastion is doing this. And then they all went to go get Bastion. At no point did anybody have a reaction to the fact that Charles was not dead. Like none. Never. I kept waiting for it. I was like, and then I had to go to AI and I'm like, did they already know Charles was not dead? Because they seem really not surprised. You know, like did they know that the Shi'ar Empire had taken him? Did they know he was okay? Because like nobody is like really blown away. But no. They just skipped it.
There was some interesting stuff. There was some interesting stuff for sure.
Okay,
and when it comes to me, it was like more of the and here's the thing, like I even had issues with some of this stuff in the comic books. That's why I, you know, there are things about the X-Men that I've never really thought was like something that they should examine, like in media if they do it. Like when Rogue was able to absorb the nurse's like knowledge in order to like deliver the baby, that was just, to me, that's something that's just so outlandish. Like you didn't have to go there. You know what I mean? And I understand she's done that in the comic books before. I wasn't a fan of it then either. Okay. Wasn't a fan of that. So just that kind of stuff. But really what really bugged me the most was the original series was very, very clearly for kids. Okay. This X-Men 97 is not. And I would say they dialed up the violence to PG-13 ish levels, which is not terrible. It's not R-rated, okay. It's not R-rated, but they did dial up the violence for sure. Okay, the mortality of people, the mortality of foes is definitely different than it was in the original series. There's no doubt about that. And then of course they had to get into the torrid affair of Rogue and Magneto, which I just was not a fan of that at all. That was one of those things. It's just like, look, man, that it in the universe they already established, that relationship makes no sense at all. It makes no sense at all, because now you go back and you watch the original series. Whenever Rogue and Magneto were fighting, they never once had any kind of glancing thing where they were back and forth with each other or flirtatious and none of that. It was always like good guy and bad guy. So to throw that in there like that, to me, was comic service, because yes, it was a run in the comic lines. I'm aware of that. Okay. But in the universe they established in this show, if it is a continuation of this show, that makes no sense. And so to me, stuff like that, it just, I couldn't really get over it in my little head. But ultimately, I didn't hate season 1. Okay. I just was not as big a fan of season 1 as a lot of people. A lot of people were like, oh, this is the best thing in the world, just because Marvel's been giving us like, turds lit on fire lately. And I wasn't that way. I was like, okay, it's better than what the MCU is giving us, but that's a really, really low bar. You know what I mean? So I watched it when it came out. I can honestly say I think I enjoyed it for what it was, but I had some qualms about it, and I was not as crazy about it as a lot of people. So I think that's kind of where I stand on it. It's just like I kind of look at it the way that I look at a lot of Disney projects right now, and that's just kind of how and season 2 is really no different, right? Like season 2, I think once again they kind of tried to play the long game, play the continuous story game, get caught up by putting too many different storylines and villains in there. Kind of had a situation where they kind of made things a little PG-13ish with the moment that they had with Magneto at the end, and I just don't know, man. Like there's a lot of things that they could have done, I think, to make this a lot better. And I think just kind of narrowing in and focusing on one story in the 2 episodes that they just gave us of the Rise of Apocalypse, that literally could have been the entire 2 seasons. Like you could have done an entire 2 seasons of that kind of buildup and storyline, and looking for everyone in the timeline and finding them and watching him. I mean, this reminds me very much of like the last 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, where they took the Mad Queen story and they took it in like 1 episode. It's like you didn't give her enough time to turn crazy. You basically just introduced her and then said, now she's a psychopath. She's a raving psychopath that wants to kill everybody. It didn't make any sense, right? And that's exactly what they just did with Apocalypse. It's just like they introduced him, they were friendly, they were all, oh, let's just go to this temple together, and then boom, he's a raving psychopath. It was definitely just too quick. And they could have taken an entire season just on those 2 episodes. And that's the problem that I think they have. They're so anxious to get everything in there. They want to get X-Force in there, and they want to get X-Factor in there, and they want to make sure that they get, all of the legacy X-Men that never got a chance to be in there, and all the villains that never got their due. We want to make sure we get them in there. But in doing so, they had to rush a story that could have been a really good run if they would have taken their time with it. So, because the Apocalypse story, honestly, is one of the best that they have. It's a very good story, but they just rushed it. That's the way that it felt to me.
I will openly acknowledge that heel turns are hard. Daenerys's heel turn makes no sense in Game of Thrones. It doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And prequel fans out there, I'm going to burst your bubble, because Anakin's heel turn in Revenge of the Sith makes no sense. It doesn't, he's figured out that Palpatine is the Sith, and Mace Windu is like, he's the Sith, help me kill him. And what kind of a sucker are you? How dumb are you that you're like, he's down there, you figured out that he's the Sith, and he's like, oh, I'll help you save Padme. Did you just fall off the turnip truck? How stupid are you?
And then he does it, and you still follow him. It's like, she dies, and you still follow him.
So I'm going to acknowledge heel turns are hard unless you work in pro wrestling, because they manage to make it believable every time. But they're hard. But this one was basically Apocalypse walks into a futuristic, temple, and he's like, wait, I turned into a raving lunatic who subjugates humanity? Why didn't you tell me I turned into a raving lunatic? Let me turn into that right now. How dare you hide it from me? That's his motivation.
Yeah. And I mean, they were just, like before, they might as well have been skipping on the beach together. Like right before that, it was crazy. And I just didn't understand where they were going with that as far as rushing that story. It could have been a really good story. It's a really good story in the comics. Okay. And the Apocalypse is indeed one of the most unbeatable foes in Marvel history in the comics. I mean, that is true. And so to build it up and have it happen in virtually 5 minutes, I wasn't really a fan of that. And so it was not my favorite.
And then I don't understand this post credit, Tim, because I thought we were all gathering in 1997, because Apocalypse from the future went back to the 90s to fight the X-Men. The X-Men have gathered the X-Men from the future and the X-Men from the past to 1997. Don't know why it's not 8, but anyway, to 1997, because Apocalypse is coming. But apparently next week, we're not going to be fighting Apocalypse in 1997. We're going to be hunting down Weapon X and getting Wolverine his adamantium back. Is that what we're going to do instead? What's Apocalypse doing? Twiddling his thumbs, waiting?
Yeah, I have no idea. And that's, you're spot on. It was for me, that just didn't feel like a normal storyline. That almost felt like we need to put some Avengers in here or people are going to stop watching. That's almost what it felt like to me. Like, we're losing the millennials who don't care about the X-Men. So we've got to put a couple of these Avengers in here because they're at least familiar with them. You know what I mean? Well, I don't know. It felt weird.
And Weapon X, from all the stories I can remember. Now, Wolverine getting his adamantium ripped out by Magneto, that's a very famous X-Men story. But getting it back, all of the Weapon X stories, all of the getting his memories and who am I and the experiments, those are all solo Wolverine stories. Those are all from his solo title. Those weren't in Uncanny. Those weren't in X-Men.
You'll have to forgive me because I haven't read it in a long time. I don't know if that's part of AOA and Astonishing. I forget because I haven't read it in a long time. But I don't know if that's part of AOA and Astonishing and him getting his adamantium back and all that kind of stuff. Because AOA Wolverine, he's got his hand cut off, right? Isn't that?
Age of Apocalypse. Yeah, he's only got one hand, and it's all
AOA Wolverine only has one hand, right? But I forget how we got to that point. And I think I think that we're getting ready to have Onslaught, obviously, now that Magneto is dead, right? And that's going to be a big thing. I think a lot of people are going to be really excited to see Onslaught. I don't know. I feel like they're going to do the same thing they did with Apocalypse and rush it, though.
I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know who Onslaught is. I'm not an X-Men guy.
It is the Professor. It's hold on. Professor X consciousness in Magneto. It's weird. Anyway, I'll look it up for you. I forget too, but I think. But honestly, what we're going to get, Dan, is we're going to get a lot of these kind of late 90s storylines. I think is kind of what they're really pushing. Not really the storylines that we're all familiar with from Uncanny and all those in the early 90s run as well. We're not going to see those. We're going to see more of the late 90s storylines, and I personally was not as much a fan of those. I don't think they're going to go straight to the AOA, because I do think that AOA is very universally not considered X-Men canon. So most people think it's a hypothetical. It's not a real storyline. So I don't think they're going to go to Astonishing X-Men storylines. I think that they're going to end up kind of doing some retconning of the storylines they've already kind of hashed, and go back with the timeline stuff, because we just saw Kang and we just saw a bunch of other. I think that's probably the direction they're looking to go. But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can do. So
I will say that so far I've liked season 2 better than season 1, because even though this storyline was a little rushed, it made sense for me the whole time. Like, I didn't feel like, oh wait, what just happened? Like, how did they get from that side of the room to that? Like the last season, things just kept happening. I'm like, did I miss something? Wait a minute. Why isn't anybody surprised that Professor X is alive? That was a big one for me. I had to stop and research, even though I was on a time crunch. I'm like, wait a minute, I missed something. I am not paying close enough attention. But no, the show just doesn't make any sense. But I didn't have any of those. Maybe I've gotten used to it, or maybe season 2 is better. But I feel like season 2 is better in those aspects. One thing that is universally terrible and almost ruins both seasons for me is Morph. Morph is just him.
It's never really explained how Morph came back. That's another thing, Dan, right? It's never really explained how Morph came back.
Now, I tried to research this, because he disappeared early in the original cartoon. I remember that.
He very famously died. He very famously died in like the second episode. Yeah, and then it was a situation where Wolverine was kind of pining over missing him a couple episodes after that, right? Yeah, because it was his best friend and all that kind of stuff. And they introduced, and there he was. And I don't think you watched it here. Did they really explain how he came back?
The AI told me, but the AI makes things up. Okay, that in the late seasons of the original show, he escaped from Mr. Sinister and he was back at the end of the original show. Now, do you remember that as being factual? Did the AI make that up, or did that happen?
I do not remember that, and I don't remember that, and I definitely don't remember him resembling what was later on the AOA Morph, which was basically the plain gray face. Yeah, that was how he looked in AOA. So I did not remember that in the original series at all. So just to see that change that they made for reasons I never really understood. But that's not the biggest change that they made, Dan.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah. We both know which one we're talking about here. Our girl Rogue. Man. Let me tell you something. I have not had a crush on a lot of artwork in my life, but when I was growing up, I had a massive crush on Rogue. Okay.
Yeah.
She had all the qualities that my little 11-year-old male heart desired at that moment. Okay. And I can just honestly say that is not the same road. All right.
No.
They took something from us, Dan. They took something from us. And it was definitely better in the original series. There's no doubt about that.
I feel like they had a voluptuousness budget, right? and they made Rogue skinny. We got skinny Rogue, and they took like 95% of that voluptuousness budget and they threw it at the Goblin Queen, not Jean and not Madeline Pryor, right? Only when she's the Goblin Queen does she get to be, and then they took the other 5%.
Emma still looks pretty good too, though. Emma still looks pretty good. So yeah,
skinny though, a little skinny. Goblin Queen was not skinny. Goblin's Queen was not skinny, and then they took the other 5% and they gave it to Black Costume Storm because she's stacked. Like Black Costume Storm is that's what Rogue supposed to look like, and exactly. I don't know why Rogue needs to get robbed. It doesn't seem fair. She's still, like okay, the top is still sort of in line, but somebody needs to get Queen and Sir Mix-a-Lot in and explain to them the virtues of a nice rear. That's what needs to happen because they make this rocking world go round.
All right,
but
I think we've thoroughly examined the booty.
Yeah, Morph though, he's like Gaia from Secret Invasion. Yeah, like this is the most, and they ramp it up. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse as the show progresses because it started in like episode 2 or 3. He turns into the Blob so that Wolverine can bounce off of him, and you're like, well, then that shouldn't work like that. And you're rolling with it. By the end of the first season, he's turning into the Hulk and full on smashing stuff. Like he's the Hulk, okay? By the first episode of this second season, he's manifesting Mjolnir out of nowhere. He actually has Thor's magical Uru hammer, and he's throwing it at things. He turns into Thor, and he somehow has a hammer, and he can throw it at stuff.
Well, what's really weird is, like Morph was an animated series original, I believe. Okay, he's like Harley Quinn, right? He's an animated series original, and then he was adopted later on in the comics. Okay, and he was adopted in AOA, which once again is still not considered canon by most X-Men fans. But that's kind of when you get a shapeshifter, there are pretty universal rules with them, right? The rules are there with Mystique and Chameleon and so many others. With the Skrulls, you can look like the people, but to have their power, I mean, that's why would you ever just be yourself? Why would you ever just be yourself? If you could be Apocalypse, if you're Morph and you could be Apocalypse, why not? I mean, that's the answer to our problem right there. Apocalypse is here and none of us can beat him. Well, what if we had an Apocalypse that was Apocalypse? You know what I mean?
What if Morph just turns into Apocalypse?
That seems like the issue to me, right? So I feel I'm with you, Dan. It's a little too hyper powered for me. And I get it because it's a series original. They can kind of retcon it into what they want. I think they kind of dialed it up to 11 a little too much there. I think they definitely should have maybe at the very least explained what the limits were somehow, and they didn't do that. So right now we're all just running on the assumption that whoever he turns into, he has their power, and that's
he has Mjolnir. Like you got to think they're in the future, right? Did he generate a Mjolnir from his body mass? Did he summon real Mjolnir? Is future Thor somewhere on a battlefield
is he
without
now
his
worthy?
hammer?
So
Yeah.
so Morph Thor is as worthy as real Thor. That makes no sense, right? So
yeah. I don't. It like it just doesn't work. If you can be Thor and the Hulk, right?
Mhm.
If you're going to have an argument, most powerful Marvel heroes, right?
Mhm.
Like top two.
It's Gaia and it's him, right? That's got to be it.
But traditionally, though, you've got Thor and Hulk, right? If you could be Thor and Hulk and you could switch back and forth, do you need a whole team of dudes? I mean,
nope.
Do you need help? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What are the rest of these guys doing? They there for moral support? Mm-hmm. They just root Morph on while they sit around and drink sodas. It doesn't. I don't. You know what? Storm lost her powers. No problem. We still have a weather witch. Storm could go find herself. Morph could just morph into Storm. He could control the weather, right?
I mean, you would think, right? There's a lot that there's a lot of problems that can be solved with that little loophole that they're just not doing. That didn't make any sense.
Yeah. You should not. This is a Pandora's box that should have never been opened. I just don't. Yeah. It seemed like they do want to squeeze in more X-Men, and this is the way they found to do it. They were in the middle of that fight with Trask in season 1, and all of a sudden Quicksilver's there. Honest to God, I stopped and was like, where the hell did Quicksilver come from? It took me forever to realize that was Morph.
It's Morph, yeah. And to be fair, they did that a lot in the original series as well, right? Where they showed him changing into like several different characters. I think at one point he turned into Deadpool in the original series, and that was very brief and quick. And then there were some other characters that he turned into very quickly. He turned into Captain America, I think, at one point. There was some other stuff. So yeah, I mean, I understand they want to do as many Marvel characters as possible because that's what they're paid to do. But
having the powers is just that's a bridge too far. It's a bridge too far.
It is.
Anyway, what do we got in the comments, Tim?
Let's go ahead and take a few. Yeah, let's take a few here. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So episode 1 was an interesting bridge from the finale of season 1. So this was it's been a week since I've watched this one. This is the one where Forge and Bishop are going and trying to find the X-Men, find wherever they are, right? Like that's the episode where this is. Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting bridge because where we left off before was people were at different points in time, and we left off knowing that Apocalypse they were in the era of Apocalypse Rise in Egypt. So that was where we left off, and then it was a necessary bridge, but I'll be completely honest, I didn't remember it all. So I didn't really remember where everyone is. I kind of picked it up with context, but they didn't really give me a lot to go on the previously on. They didn't really give me all of the details that I needed to remember without rewatching the whole thing. So I didn't rewatch the whole thing, but I picked it up. I picked it up pretty easily with the context there.
This show does not believe in giving you context, Tim. They don't believe in giving you what you need to know what is happening. That is not in the cards. If you're watching this, that is not how they get down.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but
for sure. And Forge, of course, is somebody I think has always kind of been one of those like questions, like how capable is Forge? You know what I mean? Like that's always kind of been a question. Like he kind of seems like he's the one who figured out how to do all this stuff. So, between he and Bishop. So I think that's it's been a very interesting development there with Forge because he really didn't have a huge role in the original series. And he really didn't have a huge role in the original series. And then all of a sudden, he's responsible for rehabilitating Storm, and with that whole story with the adversary, which was straight from the comic books. The entire thing was straight from the comic books, but this was again straight from the comic books. But it's a character that we were introduced to very quickly, and it looked like they had been with him for years, but that wasn't really the case, right? I mean, we didn't see him a lot in the original series. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
PSA on the adversary episodes, my main takeaway was I got to warn people: don't hold flashlights in your teeth. That's bad. You could chip a tooth. You can. Yeah. My dad chipped his tooth that way. It's not a good way to hold a flashlight.
Not a good idea. Not a good idea, folks.
So don't do that.
All right. So okay. All right, Dan. Did you like the X-Force episode? Pardon the pun, but it felt forced. Okay. So I will admit, I think that the X-Force episode did feel like just a nostalgia grab for people who wanted to see X-Force. And I get it. They did the theme song with X-Force instead of the X-Men. And I personally didn't care for that. I mean, to me, the X-Force story was just wasted time that they could have been using on the Apocalypse story to kind of give us the proper build-up. That's the way I kind of felt about it. I don't need to see Jubilee being capable. Jubilee is always supposed to be, in my mind, the dopey little kid that can't do anything right. And now we've made her a completely, fully capable X-Man. I didn't care for that. That's just me. How did you feel about that, Dan?
I really liked the X-Force episodes. I felt like that's what the season was building to, because it was all about Cable, Jean and Scott found Cable, Nathan, in the future, and helped him find his thing, which probably changed Cable's personality. It all gets really confusing with the time travel. But so now Cable's a little bit different than the other Cable that we had before, because he got to know Jean and Scott, and it's still the Apocalypse story, because apparently Cable's life's mission is to kill Apocalypse. That's like why he exists, right? So I don't know. I'm assuming that after we get done with the Weapon X arc, however long that takes, we'll get back. Yeah, we're gonna get back to this 90s confrontation with Apocalypse, and I'm assuming X-Force will be a part of that. I would think they would be there for that.
What really killed me is that this wasn't really the X-Force that I was familiar with. How about you, Dan? Like, when I think of X-Force, I think of a lot of other people that were not involved in this team. That's just me. I don't think of Sunspot and Jubilee. I think of Shatterstar. I think of who's the Deadpool and Domino are both in there. So I think of completely different people than what we had here. So what do you think of when you think of X?
I'm going to repeat that no X books ever made my pull list. So,
but you're familiar with the roster. I mean, you've seen Deadpool too. I mean, you're familiar with the roster.
I do know that like the key is that you have to have Cable. That's like the driving thing. Absolutely. If you've got you got to have Cable. Absolutely. Deadpool, was he in it long? I don't feel like Deadpool. I know he came from X-Force, but wasn't he a villain? Wasn't he a mercenary sent to kill them?
He was hot and cold. Yeah, he had episodes where he was both, issues where he was both. I mean, but he was hot and cold. Where he definitely was not like the smart aleck, wisecracking, fourth wall breaking. That's a completely different character than what they had in X-Force. Like a completely different character. The powers are the same, and the abilities and the capabilities are the same, but completely different character. That's an evolving character. That's an evolution of the character. I I would say that most people, if they had seen Deadpool in X-Force and it was the comic accurate Deadpool that was in X-Force, they would have been very disappointed.
So. And then, so I know you got to have Cable. Domino, I'm from like that. She should have been there because like you always see Domino's like that's like Cable's right hand person. You always see Cable and Domino, and then the rest of them are like I don't. Cyclops I always associated with the X-Men. You know, I don't. Maybe she ended up in X-Force later. Who else did we get on this team? We had Archangel. Which I never really considered him. And was he in X-Force at some point or no?
I don't remember. I consider him X-Men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I consider Archangel in the X-Men. Now he was one of the Horsemen at one point. Remember?
Right.
He was one of the Horsemen. But that was not. But then he quit. He came back and joined the X-Men. So I didn't really know what to think about that one either. I didn't know what to think about that one. And then wasn't Havoc in quite a bit? But that would have to be something we go back in time travel because obviously, right? So I don't know. That would be a time travel thing if that's how we get it. But you know,
well, we're getting plenty of time travel. The time travel
we are. That's what I'm saying. So maybe that's coming because we're deeply ensconced in the Summers family anyway. So maybe that's what they're going to end up doing. But yeah, as of now, we have no Havoc, and I believe Havoc was on that roster. So we'll see.
So I'm not. All I know is that you have Cable, and I do remember Domino. So they may be stretched to make this roster, but I liked Cable being like this determined madman trying to hunt down Apocalypse and stop him. I thought, but and especially that's got to pay off when they finally have this big confrontation. Oh, hey, Shatterstar.
Let's give some credit to my dude Shatterstar. Okay. All right. Don't say that I don't like gay characters. Okay. I love Shatterstar. Okay. So anyway, but yes, give some love to Shatterstar, man. The alien swordsman. We need more alien swordsmen amongst us. Come on. All right. What's going on?
See, I'm not an X guy. Why is the alien guy with the mutant team? He's not a mutant, then, is he? Like
he's not a mutant. He's an alien. He's got like green blood or something, right? And
it doesn't track.
And he's really good with swords. He's really good with swords. So
this isn't tracking.
I lost his swords a long time ago. Yeah.
So I'm not understanding. I'm not following. See, this is again why I'm not an X guy. I'm not an X-Men guy or an X Factor guy. I'm a Spider-Man and Batman guy. That's these are my core. This is what I circle.
I feel like a lot of people probably when they started seeing the X-Force with the X-Men theme song, they just jumped right in. They did the Leo thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But me, I was just kind of like, they're just reaching back to try to make some people happy. And I didn't think it was really necessary. That's just the way that I felt about it. But,
well, I liked it. I did like it. I mean, Jubilee here's the thing. Jubilee has gotten a lot over 2 seasons. She's gotten a lot of screen time.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong. She's I can totally tell that they are very much limiting the characters whose voices have changed over the years, right? Like Wolverine is not getting a lot of dialogue. Rogue not getting a lot of dialogue this season. Did you notice Rogue's voice is very changed to me? She sounds a lot older. Yeah, she sounds a lot older to me. And I
know there was a lot of good.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I know there's a lot of criticism of Wolverine's voice after season 1, but I just watched it today. I thought it was fine. I thought he sounded gruff and angry as Wolverine should. I feel like the producers of the show, like your X-Men nerds, like many gatekeeping nerds, do not enjoy the most popular aspects of the thing they like. They like to call people who like that thing posers, and as such, your deep bred X-Men nerds don't actually like Wolverine because everybody likes Wolverine. And if you just like Wolverine, you're not a real X-Men nerd. And so I feel like Wolverine is suffering in this show, this whole series, because it's being ran by very deep X-Men nerds who I don't think like Wolverine at all. And I think that's why we're getting very little Wolverine. I don't know.
But to supplement that with Jubilee, I think the reason for that is she does sound the same. She does sound exactly the same as she did in the 90s. You know what I mean? And so it's easy to pull off and say, okay, let's give her more dialogue and let's give her. But they made her way. Oh, we've got somebody jumped in and said Wolverine is gay. Well, I mean, Well, I feel like gay, Shatterstar.
You know
gay,
what?
Sure. You know,
here's what I want to. Here's one thing that I think that the first season was heavily hinting at. I don't know.
Morph and Wolverine. Yeah.
I don't know if Wolverine is gay for Morph, but I feel like Morph is gay for Wolverine. I feel like
absolutely.
He'll be Gene. He'll be Gene for him all night.
That's by design. You and I know that's by design, and that is, we've got Beau DeMayo, who very famously is gay, and kind of worked some of that into the storyline, and we know that it was announced at the Comic-Con originally that Morph is a non-binary character. So there's a lot of that stuff that they have indeed worked into the show. So I feel like it was unnecessary, but yeah, Wolverine is gay. I don't know about that. I agree with you. Morph is definitely gay for Wolverine. There's no doubt about it.
I don't know that if they hadn't announced that Morph was non-binary at the Comic-Con, that I would know that. I know they must have said it at one time in the show.
Yeah, they did.
But
it was in the description. It was in the description of the characters that they released. So I mean, it was right there.
I'm saying, like, if you skip the description and you didn't see the press release and you just watched the show, I don't know if I did not notice it at all.
All right. We're just stretching now. All right, Punisher, you got on the show. Congratulations. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Though? Like I did they actually say it in dialogue? If they do, they don't say it a lot. It flies by.
And the big thing about Morph and what they're doing with Morph is that the voice actor is a non-binary voice actor. So we had to make the character non-binary because I don't know. There's reasons. Anyway, but yeah, it's not the major political statement that you think it is when you make a shapeshifter. I mean, because that's functionally different than a real thing. It's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like,
it kind of makes sense.
It's kind of like in the Acolyte when they took that little squirrel dude and made him a they them. Do you remember that? And we were just like, okay, they really wanted to have a character they them so that they could just appeal to everybody, but they made it this little animated squirrel guy. You know what I mean? And we all were just like, they didn't really have to. If I was a they them, and I'm not, but if I was, I would be offended by that. I would look and say, that's what you chose to make that's how you chose to include me like that.
You're not challenging societal norms because that's an alien squirrel creature, and you don't understand the biology and anatomy of alien squirrel creatures. And the same thing with X-Men 97. We do understand the biology and anatomy of a shapeshifter, and it makes perfect sense because a shapeshifter is whatever they want to be. Like, if your character is a shapeshifter that has identity issues, which I think is something, again, none of this is actually in the show. It's all like talked about externally from the show. The creators say, Morph struggles with identity issues. Morph doesn't know who Morph really is because Morph changes shape so many times that Morph doesn't know if he really has his own personal identity at all, and you're like, okay, well, for something that could be male, female, apparently Thor, it can be an alien or an animal. I don't know. So like that makes sense. There really is not a binary. That is truly physically that. So like you're not making the big statement you think you are. You're making no statement at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a way to hide behind it if it gets criticized, but say that you're doing it. And that's the thing. That it's just like we can always say, oh, well, I mean, it's just the guy that shifts into everybody. Of course he's a they them, right? But then when somebody says, oh, well, we're at least including a they them in the show, So it's a very interesting angle, but I'm not a fan of the idea that they like to train and wrestle around together when he turns into Sabretooth and all that kind of, it's weird.
And again, that just plays back into the whole thing that apparently Morph can turn into Sabretooth and be just as powerful as Sabretooth. That's exactly. Just, I mean, if he turns into Sabretooth and Wolverine stabs him or cuts off his arm, does it just grow back like it does for Sabretooth? Does it have a healing factor? Just be like if he accidentally shifts from being Sabretooth back to being himself before his arm grows back, will it not grow back now? If he's regular Morph and somebody shoots him, can he just morph into Wolverine and suddenly heal and be fine? This power set for Morph is ridiculous. It just doesn't work. He needs to go back. In the original cartoon, he was just kind of a spy character, like Mystique. You turn into people, you fool people into thinking that you're that. Yeah. And that works. And that's a valuable skill set to have on your team. You don't need a Swiss Army knife of somebody that could be a speedster, a powerhouse, whatever you need him to be. It's just too much. It's too many powers. It doesn't work.
Way too many.
Yeah.
Way too many. And here's the thing. When somebody can be everybody, then the storyline makes no sense, right? When you have somebody that can be everybody, there is no foe you should be able to not defeat. It should be very, very easy. Okay.
Yeah.
It should be very, very easy.
Foe and you're done.
Just turn into the unbeatable foe, and there you go. Right. It's silly. It's silly to have. That was the biggest problem that I had with Gaia in Secret Invasion is exactly that. Right. Like
this show.
If you're this powerful that you can turn into any enhanced individual, then that means that you can't be beaten. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so anyway. All right, well, let's take a look at some other stuff here. Let's see. Yeah. So the Rise of Apocalypse was very interesting angle, very modern take, him making him somewhat sympathetic. So that was kind of they did try to go a little bit of a sympathetic angle, like show us baby Apocalypse. I always say this with the bad guys, like when they show us the baby. When they show us the baby bad guy, then that's how they're really trying to make it sympathetic. And they showed us baby Apocalypse with the little blue lines, and his mommy leaves him. And I mean, it was a very, very sympathetic angle they took. I thought it was unnecessary, and I did not care for it. Okay. I don't like a sympathetic angle for villains, especially someone like Apocalypse, who clearly just craves power. That's what Apocalypse craves. He craves power. Okay.
Right.
He's the most powerful thing. The reason he doesn't like the X-Men is because they challenge him to be the most powerful thing when they are collective and together. And that's, that's what I didn't like about this story. They really tried to get a sympathetic angle, and then they tried to show his struggles growing up in Egypt and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of a played thing. I just expect it nowadays that this is how they're going to introduce a villain. That's what they're going to do now. I died cracking up because I could have sworn they were going to give us baby Skeletor in Motu, Dan. I could have sworn.
Yeah.
I was just like, they're going to show us baby Skeletor and how He-Man's father wronged baby Skeletor's family or something. And they didn't do it. And I felt really good. But then they show us baby Apocalypse. and it's the same playbook that I was expecting there. So,
again, I don't know if I've said this enough, but I'm not an X-Men guy, and the X-Men just really love to have their sympathetic villains. I mean, it's all baked into the whole premise with Magneto and
that's Magneto, yeah.
Yeah, Magneto and Charles, and they have their endless debates. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I've heard the Magneto and Professor X debate. Like, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart did it, and I don't think I'm going to get a better version than that. So I don't need to have it anymore. Like, I've seen the pinnacle of how it can be done, and they've done it in comics for like 60 years now, and it's getting stale. It's very stale now. I'm over it. And don't tell me that you're bringing in new people and they're seeing it for the first time, because this show is very definitely not made for anybody who doesn't already know all of this, because I know like a quarter of this and I'm still lost almost all of the time. So so this whole debate is very stale, and Apocalypse is just another example. The X-Men always has to have the villain be maybe not the villain, because maybe they're just a mutant that was misunderstood, that maybe puke. I'm just over it.
And I think Magneto is like the ultimate example of the sympathetic villain, right? When we go back to his origin story and we go back to the concentration camp and all that kind of stuff, I think some of that was retcon, but still, I that's the storyline that I'm familiar with, and it's the one that I always liked. You know what I mean? I completely understand, why somebody who saw people that were branded and put in camps and murdered by the millions would really look at this mutant problem decades later and say, I'm not going to let this happen again. Like, that's something that I actually see and understand and agree with, and say this can make an interesting dynamic. And then you got Charles coming in and saying, well, hold on, this isn't that time. There is diplomacy. We do have checks and balances in this government. Let's let everything play out. Let's help these individuals harness their abilities. Let's do all this kind of stuff. So it's a different angle with somebody like Magneto than it is with somebody like Apocalypse, who just always is somebody that craves power. And we didn't need to see any kind of a sympathetic angle to that. Dan, I'm going to make a prediction. They're going to do this with Doom. They're going to do this with Doom in the MCU.
And here's the from what I'm understanding, which I'm not steeped in the lore, but from what I gathered from watching these episodes, Apocalypse was a mutant, but more so his real source of power was that he's been bonded with this Eternal here, the eternal power that's like part of the the real cosmic lore of Marvel, is that you have the wall at the end of reality that's made up of the previous thing, the big robots, and he merged with the power of one of those, and so like he's not really like this
Celestials,
he merged with the Celestial. And like Celestial is not let's get to know their tragic backstory. He's merged with the celestial force, and he is like an unstoppable force of nature for destruction and chaos. So like you don't need a tragic backstory for that. A tragic I mean, this was an okay story. It was a good origin. I got the idea of Magneto trying to change the course of history by changing his mind. That seemed interesting for a moment, but I don't need a really sympathetic version of Apocalypse going forward. That doesn't seem
Well,
That doesn't.
I think this is just the Disney playbook. I think that it doesn't matter if this was X-Men or who this is. This is what they do now. It's all got to be a sympathetic angle for this villain. How can we make half the audience try to be on the villain's side? That's kind of what they're aiming for here. And I don't know that you need to try to do that every time. Sometimes just an evil villain is good enough. You know what I mean? That's just an evil villain that craves power and you don't know why and you don't care why. That's good enough.
So, megalomaniacs are a thing. They, psychopaths are a thing. So let's just go with that. Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard anybody read about any of the classic evil people in this universe, right? Nobody has ever read a biography on Stalin or Hitler or Mussolini and said, "Oh, well, let's go back and see where the source of their evil began. Oh, it began when they didn't get picked for dodgeball in elementary school." It's like, no, that's nobody goes back and looks at that stuff and says, "Oh, well, this is how it all started." That's
if somebody would have just bought Hitler's paintings, if somebody would have just bought his painting,
that's it,
we could have avoided this whole thing.
Nobody liked Mussolini's meatballs when he was in culinary school. I mean, it's like, what is it? What is it that just? It's like, come on, man. Like at some
Mussolini's meatballs.
At some point, we just need to say there are people that are evil in this world. And we don't need to explain it. And if you're trying to make a story with an easy to follow conflict, it's so much better if the conflict is just a conflict. So anyway,
did you see the story? It was just recently. It was a middle school yearbook. I think they were in New Jersey. They put a picture of baby Hitler in their yearbook. They stuck it in there.
No, but whoever that guy is, I'll give him a high five if I ever see him. Yeah. That is funny. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. I wasn't a fan of Kang being pulled down to build Apocalypse up. Yep. And here's the thing. Kang isn't as powerful as Apocalypse. So, and it was very interesting that they slid Kang in there because Kang is very, very obviously not an X-Men villain. Like he's not an X-Men villain. He's very much an Avengers villain, specifically Captain America. He's very much an Avengers villain, and I did not care for that. I didn't care that they snuck Kang in there like that. I thought that was not very good. It wasn't necessary. That's the big thing. It really wasn't necessary. Did we have to have that guy in there in order to understand anything about the story? Did it do anything for the story other than to introduce the idea that Kang is here?
From what I was researching this as I went. I guess there is a comic story where Kang is like, if you're reading Marvel comics, one thing you have to understand about Kang is that he's not in one or two places. He's in all the places because he's like he time travels like crazy. Like there are so many variations of Kang, and he shows up in so many different timelines in so many different ways. And you never know if you're dealing with the Kang that already has experienced this or hasn't done that because he's, whatever. He's everywhere. So there is a storyline that has taken place where Kang went back to try to recruit Apocalypse as a successor or something. And Kang very much has an Egyptian, because I guess when Kang was very first introduced as this Pharaoh, that was like his first storyline in the Fantastic Four, as the Pharaoh something Tut. I don't know what the name was, but the first introduction of Kang was as that Pharaoh in the Fantastic Four. And of course, Apocalypse is from ancient Egypt. So I guess they figured, but it's kind of a throwaway cameo at the really, you know what I'm saying? Like
you know what I mean?
It's not like they have a confrontation.
Apocalypse and Kang could have absolutely ruled the universe together, but neither one of them would step aside. That's the problem. And I think that's kind of what Kang did. That was Kang kind of saying, okay, he can own this universe. I'm going to move on. because I can't beat him, and I guess that's okay. I didn't really understand that, and like I feel like yeah, they pulled Kang down in order to build Apocalypse up, and they did it in like 15 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I that's the thing. It's like all of a sudden one of the most powerful Marvel villains of all time is kaboom, totally nerfed, and I just wasn't a fan of that.
Kang's just getting a bad rap, man. He didn't do good here. Now, I mean, that's a very Kang thing to do, but like, oh, this plan didn't work. I'll just go do another one because he's got a bajillion plans happening at any given time. So but he's just getting a bad stretch. He got an actor who got himself in trouble. He got soloed by Ant-Man. It really put people in a twist that happened. And
one of my favorite like runs in an animated series is with Kang. I love his run in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. It was a great couple of 2 or 3 episodes. It was a great run, and I felt like it was something that was worth noting. That Kang could be one of those villains. He could be like a Thanos. He could be really built up, but I feel like they just keep fumbling him over and over again, and it should have been something special that they had with Jonathan Majors, but introducing him in Quantumania was probably a mistake, and and I feel like they just never really recovered from that. So anyway,
even if they hadn't fumbled Quantumania, that wouldn't have stopped him from beating up his girlfriend in a car. So
probably not.
Well, what are you going to do?
Sorry, Jonathan Majors. You're a great actor, but don't hit women. It's not anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Ray Rice, he taught us all a lesson. Let's learn from it.
Yeah.
Okay. The post credit to the Avengers felt desperate. Why lean on those characters to pull the X-Men forward?
Here's the thing. I don't understand why you put it at the end of this episode. I feel like it ended with a cliffhanger already. Like, did we not already have a cliffhanger?
Yeah. I mean, Magneto just died. That's a cliffhanger enough, right? I mean,
right.
It should be.
Didn't we just gather all of the X-Men in 1997, not 98, to have a huge confrontation with Apocalypse? Like, hasn't that what we've been building up to for 4 episodes? Like,
yeah.
If you had just wrapped up the Apocalypse story and you had some more episodes to go, right, then this would make sense. Like, oh, here's what we're going to do next week. But like, are this really what we're going to do next week? I don't understand. Like,
I don't either, because it's just like, okay, it's like Captain America showed up. He's like, okay, I know you got to do this Apocalypse stuff, but before you do that, I've got this really, really crazy mission that has nothing to do with that, so let's do this for a little bit first. And, I just didn't feel like that was necessary. I do think that a lot of the millennials are probably starting to trail off, and they needed to try to get some of them back. Let's show them some Avengers so that maybe they'll come back next week. That's probably what this was for.
Yeah, you need 2 things. You need more Avengers. You need more Wolverine, because Wolverine has been very much sidelined. And if you do a Wolverine, they have not had a Wolverine centric story. And if you keep going with Apocalypse, that's not going to be a Wolverine centric story.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
And so, I'm gonna. And you know what? The X people. I just got to say, I'll say this again. I'm not an X guy. I'm not an X-Men, purist. This is not my core fandom. And here's the thing: the X-Men people seem to think that their X-Men are so cool, and that they look down on all these other heroes. And I've got to say, like Captain America and Superman, they think they're so lame, right? Cyclops is so freaking lame, dude. Cyclops is the worst, lamest. Like he does pull. He pulls. Like he bats way above his weight class. I will give him that. I don't understand how. He's like Pete Davidson or something, Like what is this? How is he doing this? But you know what I'm saying? But like other than that, he has got to be one of the lamest characters. And X-Men fans are constantly calling other franchises milquetoast, and I've got to just plant my flag and say the X-Men fans need to quiet down, because they all seem to really like Cyclops, and he is the most Boy Scout lame guy in comics. We'll throw that out there.
I think what really kills me about Cyclops is Cyclops actually there really is no reference in media that has done Cyclops well. I think that in the 90s there always was friction between Cyclops and Wolverine on the animated series, and so people always assume that Wolverine is kind of the one that almost everybody sides with, and Cyclops is kind of like the company man kind of thing. I never really looked at it that way when I would read them in the comics. I would read them in the comics, and there were situations multiple times where Cyclops actually like puts Wolverine in his place, like, and if he's got an attitude, he'll just he'll put him in his place physically. And Cyclops is a very, very capable fighter, but you never see that at the beginning of season 1. They did show that a little bit. Right, they showed that a little bit where Cyclops goes in there, and it's not just the laser, right? It's the fact that Cyclops is very, very good at hand-to-hand combat. They did show that a little bit. That was offset by the fact that he apparently can jump out of an airplane and land with an optic blast, which makes no sense with physics and such. No. If you're going to cause any kind of a blast that would slow you down, it would blow your head clean off your shoulders. But we're not going to get into that.
Yeah, your neck, anyway, it's not that strong.
It's not that strong. Anyway, but
think of this, Tim. Let's think of this, Tim. If your head could support your entire body's weight, right, by itself, nooses wouldn't work.
Yeah. Nothing.
Because here's the thing: when you hang people, I don't know if everybody knows this. You don't. People who are hung are not strangled to death unless it's done wrong. That's actually a very cruel way for someone to die from hanging. That means you haven't hung them high enough, or you tied the noose wrong. But the idea is if you hang someone, that jerk snaps their neck. Well, if you're falling from an airplane and you shoot an optic beam with enough force to lift your body up, it's the same basic physics. You would snap your neck. Mm-hmm. It's, you can't support your body's weight from your head. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, anyway, sure. Just a little lesson, on anatomy.
Well, it is so funny because as soon as I saw that was the first thing I thought. I said, that's ridiculous. Okay. And yes, again, I know that that's something that has happened in the comics. I'm well aware of it. Okay. I'm not a fan of it there either. Okay. I would prefer that my superheroes have superpowers that make super sense. And that is one of those things. Not a fan of it. Never been a fan of it. Never going to be a fan of it. All right. If a man falls out of an airplane, he should probably die. Okay.
We demand
if that man cannot fly, he could probably die.
We demand more and better techno babble from our superhero cartoons. That's what we're saying here, folks. We like Magneto stops all of the world's energy plants, right, with magnetism. At no point does anybody explain how an EMP works, right? And then all of a sudden, he's supposed to be able to magically reverse this from happening, which is not how an EMP works. And we don't even get 2 lines of dialogue. Beast and Forge are sitting right there. They can have one little Star Trek style exchange where they explain how Magneto can magically make it all work again somehow. And then it would make sense. But no, you can't even take the time to give me some technobabble nonsense. And I'm not happy with it. I need at least some acknowledgement that you're doing things that don't work or make sense. You can't just just keep running with it as it does.
And here's the thing, like I rip on Claremont a lot for this because I was familiar with the characters before I read his Uncanny run. But one of the biggest problems I had with Claremont is that he very, very much used the dialogue as a almost like a narration, where Wolverine would be fighting somebody and he would go up and slash with his claws and go, "These are my retractable adamantium claws that are indestructible," and you're just thinking, okay, that's a really weird thing to say when you're attacking somebody, but it gave the reader a lot of reference for what was happening, right? And so I rip on Claremont for that when he did it in the Uncanny run. But you got to remember, this is when these characters were in their infancy. People didn't really realize what they were doing. And I think, when you're dealing with a series like this, you got a lot of people where this is going to be their first exposure to the X-Men. And they might not have any frame of reference for how these people are able to do these things that seemingly contradict physics with their powers. I think it's something that needs to be explained. Like you said, explain how that works. Give me just a line of dialogue that can work as a narration. It's not that hard. Okay. Call your buddy Chris Claremont, Bo DeMeo. You could call him and he will tell you how to do it. Okay.
Give me one line of dialogue that explains why getting stabbed through the heart with 3 claws doesn't kill Magneto. Just one line of dialogue about how.
Well,
I know he's the master.
All he did was isolate the metal molecules that blah 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 or something, and it would be like, okay, he isolated the molecule. Oh, okay, that's a thing, But they didn't do any of that, so I had to do it just now,
Yeah, you had to make it up. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Just in the cartoon, he stabs him, and all of a sudden, that doesn't matter. He heals just as magically as the elf in Rings of Power.
Except Remy LeBeau. Remy LeBeau got killed, and it's just like, oh, well, okay, so people can die. So, it's very interesting.
But only when the plot needs them to. That's when you die, is when the plot thinks you should.
And that's kind of what I have. Like it looks like very, 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 very obviously, and in this show when they originally started, they said nobody's going to be safe. We're going to make sure that we have big, flashy deaths, because that's what makes some of these series like The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones. It's what makes them interesting, is the fact that nobody is safe week to week. I don't really like my superheroes being like that.
No.
Quote Steven Spielberg. No. It's not that kind of show. You know what I mean?
It's not that kind of show, man.
It's not that kind of show. And sure, there are people that died in a 200 issue run. There were people that died. Okay.
Yeah.
But by and large, the good guys win, the bad guys lose. And when you're doing a series that was meant for 8-9-year-old kids back in 1992, that's how it always worked. Okay. Juggernaut could have crushed Rogue, but he didn't. Okay. Because Rogue's the good guy,
We run into this almost everything that we watch, Tim. And I'm sorry, Snyder Bros. I'm sorry, Andor fans. Dark, slow, somber, and depressing does not equal deep, mature, and complex. Those things are not automatically. Here's the thing: when you kill a bunch of people or get real dark and edgelord style, you know what I'm saying? You're not showing how mature you are. You're like a grade school kid cursing to show what a grown-up you are. That is exactly what being dark and somber is. Listen, if you think that you have to be, if you think it's simplistic when everybody makes it, please list for me how many members of the Fellowship die in Lord of the Rings. Exactly one. Exactly one. Yeah. And it was the one that was tempted to do the wrong thing from the very beginning. That's the one that died out of the very large Fellowship, right? And are you going to tell me that Tolkien was not complex. He was not deep. He was not mature. The dude fought in World War One. He was in the trenches. Okay. He wrote a whole thick book of mythology about this world before he ever wrote a story that happened in it. He had all the mythology worked out before he's like, okay, now who are my characters and where am I going to tell the story? Okay. So you don't have to be bleak to be mature and interesting. That's not, so you don't have to kill people to be deep. Your superheroes can be aspirational. They can all make it. They can all survive. If you don't know how to create stakes without killing them off left and right, then you're just not doing it right. I'm sorry. You're not writing it the way you should.
Yeah, and that there are so many stories in Marvel that are like that, right? The X-Men is not one of them, right? There are people that die in X-Men. I'm not saying that there aren't, but this isn't Daredevil. This isn't Punisher. This isn't something where there's kind of like this almost R-rated backstory. You don't have that, right? You don't have this mental case, depression, psychomania, guy like Frank Castle. That's not what we're talking about here, right? And so to have it where we have major character deaths, in a show like this, to me, is just completely missing the mark. It's completely missing the mark. And I would argue that in the few times that it has happened in the MCU, it was a bad decision, right? Like when Quicksilver died, is there anybody who thought that was a great decision now? Looking back on it, do you really think that we're better off that we didn't have Quicksilver all this time? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you look back at and you say, well, we've got to have a major character death at some point. No, you don't. Okay? No, you don't. You don't need to in a superhero film. In a superhero film, it's the exact opposite. We can fight all of those rules. You don't have to have a major character death in order to have an interesting story. Interesting stories come from, like Dan said, having an aspirational character doing things that are completely and totally way above what they think they're capable of. That's what people want to see a superhero story for. And maybe you and I are just in a different era of superheroes films than these people enjoy nowadays, Dan. But for me, I'm with you. I feel like this is a little too depressing to be an X-Men series for me, and a little too dark. You know what I mean? Like I never looked at the X-Men films this way, and
I would say like
here's the thing. Sanju says that his death was impactful and necessary for the story. I would say this. I would say we didn't need it right now. That's what that's what I think is important. We didn't need it right now for the story. And I feel like we could have dealt with that a little later. All right. Especially because I think we know his death is probably pushing towards Onslaught, like we mentioned. But I'm not, me personally, I don't think we needed it in that particular moment. That's we're only 4 episodes into this thing. So anyway,
we'll see how it pays off. I do feel like Gambit, he was one of the few characters I was really enjoying in the first season.
And it almost felt like they just teased way too much because they went into this torrid affair with Rogue and Magneto. It kind of felt like that's why Gambit took the hit. He took the hit so that it can always be something that's on Rogue's conscience, which I think is just a terrible, depressing thing. It's a terribly depressing thing that they've done. So I never really was a fan of that. I loved Gambit. Gambit's one of my favorite X-Men of all time, which is why I'm very sad that we never got a good cinematic representation of him. We had that terrible, terrible representation in Origins, which I'll never forget. That was awful. And then we had Channing Tatum, and that was he did his best like parody impression of Remy LeBeau. But I'm just not I've settled on the fact that I'm never going to get a cinematic Gambit, and now they killed him off in the series, so I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, he and like they had to double down. He's not coming back. They buried him.
Yeah.
You know, there was a funeral, there was a coffin. Yeah, he didn't disappear. Yeah. Here's the thing, you missed my whole point. Dark and grim is not mature. That doesn't necessarily equal mature. It's like a 5-year-old saying curse words. It doesn't mean that you're more mature. That doesn't mean that.
Well, and I also think that, you know, look, I'm willing to acknowledge, yes, you know, what they did with the series was originally made for 8-9-year-old kids, and then we wait 30 years, and those 8-9-year-old kids are, you know, 40-year-old kids. Okay, so we're going to make something that's for 40-year-olds. Well, they didn't really make something that was for 40-year-olds, though. That's the you know, they made something that was kind of maybe a PG-13ish kind of caliber. So it was kind of in that era where, you know, it was kind of geared towards, you know, people that were in the like, you know, 16, 18-ish age is kind of what would typically go for some kind of entertainment like this. So I don't know that this is necessarily, quote unquote, for adults, right? And if it was, like I said, a lot of the things that they did didn't really make sense in the storyline that they had already previously laid out. And that's the issue that I had with it. So I can respect the fact that, yes, they're trying to get a nostalgia pull from people that watched this show 30 years ago, myself included. Okay. But what I'm not going to say is I'm not going to sit here and say that it made the universe consistent that they had laid out. So me personally, I have to remove this completely from the original series if I'm going to enjoy the story, because I cannot look at the two stories as married together. I just can't, because they don't flow with each other. They just don't.
I'm not steeped enough in the lore of the original cartoon to be upset about any continuations or.
Yeah, I saw that it was rated at 9.5. I saw that it was rated at 9.5. First of all, like, you know, it was rated 9.5 at like 4:00 yesterday. Okay, so I don't think the sample size was huge. Okay, it was rated at 9.5 at like 4:00 yesterday, and then I also think that the amount of people that are watching this are the people that want to like it already. I think that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
I will give it this. I'm liking season 2 better than I like season 1. I'm not getting lost. There's not these giant leaps where I feel like a scene got cut and now I don't know how we got from where we were to where we are. So I'm liking that. And I'm more okay with the Magneto death than I was with Gambit's death because like I said, I've heard Charles and Magneto have their debates enough times. And if Magneto being gone means I don't have to hear that again this season, okay. You know what? I've had plenty of Magneto. Magneto was he was starting to suck all the oxygen out of the room. He's like Fisk in the Daredevil shows. You know, he's great. It's wonderful, but can we please get somebody else in here without him always having to be the overarching thing? Can we have our heroes have another challenge that is not still related to this guy? You know, like, you know, I mean, I get it. If you're Popeye, you got to fight Brutus in every cartoon because that's all you got. You know what I'm saying? But Magneto doesn't need to.
It's Bluto, Dan. You need to get your cartoons right. It's Bluto, not Brutus. Okay.
Yeah, Bluto. So again, Popeye has to fight Bluto for olive oil every cartoon. You know what I'm saying? It can't be some other guy, you know. Yogi the Bear has to try to outsmart the Ranger. And it's always, you know, you can't do it other week. But you know what? Scooby-Doo gets to find a different person under a different mask in every cartoon. You know what I'm saying? So we don't all have to have the same villain every week. The X-Men should be more like Scooby-Doo, you know? They don't need Magneto there in every episode. So yeah, I'm ready for him to move on from Magneto. And it was a fairly dramatic end.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like now, the whole like quote unquote mutant cause is completely it's completely and totally something that's been launched. You don't need Magneto for that anymore. So yeah, and there are several different storylines now and directions that they can go, which could be interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, Dan, season 2 so far, these first 4 episodes, the way that I would state it is that I'm intrigued by where they're going to go with the Cable and the Apocalypse story. I also feel like they've made a little bit of a mistake with the Apocalypse origin, because that feels like a very, very rushed story to me. So I feel like they could have just taken their time with that, and that could have been the whole season. That could have been the whole season.
Now, here's the thing: is in spite of our rant against darkness, if they could find a way to kill Morph next episode, I would be totally down with that, because I feel like without that,
Dan, he's the one bulletproof guy. They're just absolutely never going to do it.
Because by the end of the season, everyone will be dead, and then Morph will shift into Uatu the Watcher and just make it all go away. He'll just like that is the trajectory, because we started with him turning into the Blob and being able to springboard Wolverine. By an episode ago, he was turning into Thor, complete with a hammer. You know what I'm saying? Where do we go from, end of last season we had Hulk. Beginning of this season, we have Thor with Mjolnir. By the end of the season, he has to be a Celestial, Galactus. You know what I'm saying? Like he needs to be Galactus by the end of the season. Like if we're going to keep ramping this up, we're running out of spaces to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Sancho says, I think season 3 might be AOA. I mean, I don't know that they're going to go AOA, just because AOA is, we've already talked about it. It's often not considered X-Men canon by a lot of people that have very, very impassioned and strong opinions on it. Not me. I don't care. But a lot of people will tell you that the original Uncanny run and the 91 run, Dan, the 1991 run, both of those are your classic X-Men canon. So I don't know that that's where they're going, but we'll see. If they do AOA, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it because it would be different. It would be geared more towards people that are my age instead of your people that are going to be your legacy X-Men fans from the 60s and 70s, because AOA is more late 90s. It was a late 90s storyline.
So here's one. Sanji wants to know if they did. Now here, I've still never made it to watching Loki season 2. Not because I like season 1, but then it happened and I realized I didn't need to know anything that happened because they abandoned Kang and it didn't feel urgent. And now I'm probably just never going to get to it. It's been so long now and there were no repercussions. So if Jonathan Majors Kang had a redemptive moment in the MCU, it would have had to have been Loki season 2. And I haven't seen it. You have, Tim. Was Kang done worse in the MCU or in X-Men 97?
So in X-Men 97, we just haven't seen a lot of Kang. We saw him very, very briefly, and then he just said, "Oh, I'm out of here. Apocalypse has taken over." So that I'm not a fan of that. You know what I mean? Compared to what we got in the MCU. Now in the MCU, he was very, very nerfed, but I don't think it was ever explained that this was the Kang. That this was always explained as a Kang. And that was kind of the issue, right? Is yes, this one got beat by the Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it also he also was, one of thousands of Kangs, Kang variants that we never got to see the most powerful of. He was the most radical. That's what they said. They never said he was the most powerful. So it's entirely possible that there is a more powerful Kang that we never got to see. And we can thank Jonathan Majors for that, of course. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's all the Kang we're ever going to get in the MCU. And if so, that's a shame. Because I feel like Kang, there's still that whole stadium full of Kangs that we'll never get to see. And nobody will ever know why.
The door is open for a real power showdown with a Kang in this X-Men universe. But that would be an odd choice, seeing as how he is primarily an Avengers villain. So, but maybe they want to spin this out. You've got X-Men 97. What year would the Spider-Man one be if they relaunched Spider-Man? I mean, we've had Peter and
so that series started in 94 and it ran through 98, 99, maybe something.
So you have Spider-Man 99 or Spider-Man 2000,
something like that. Yeah.
Start up the Spider-Man show again, and then maybe you like tie in some Avengers and you get a whole thing and you got Kang. And you do a whole interconnected, like, animated universe, that has all of these characters, and that could be fun, because they've definitely screwed up the cinematic one. Let's see. Celestials play a big role in mutant stories. I hope they return in future movies. Maybe Judgment Day. I've still never seen the Eternals, so my Celestial exposure in the MCU is nil. Yeah. I've
never wanted to smack Jack Kirby as hard as I possibly did that movie. There's just no way around it, man. Like, Jack, you should have just let this project die on the desk. Okay, you fought for decades to get this thing to print, and now Disney decided that it was a roster worth putting in the MCU, and it was just awful. It was just awful. There's just no doubt about it. So
Jack had this real penchant for trying to do this new mythology, and it's all very similar. When you squint, you can't tell the Eternals from the New Gods from the Inhumans. They all kind of vaguely are the same mythological, ultra high tech Kirby thing. And it just doesn't. I get, I know they didn't always get along and they argued over credit, but I feel like Jack maybe needed Stan to give him some of that sprinkle on it, because
that's the thing. It kept getting vetoed. It kept saying, "No, Jack, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it." Well, then Jack left. He went to DC, and while he was at DC, he tried to get it launched, and they wouldn't do it there either. They said, "Jack, no, we don't like that story. We don't like those characters. We don't like any of that." And so he brought it back to Marvel when he came back, and he finally got it to print. I mean, it was like his baby. That is the thing he just couldn't let go. It's like, I'm going to do the Eternals. And I think, in Jack's mind, he always wanted an easy bridge to the Celestials and the Deviants and all that kind of stuff. But to me, I look at this and I just say this is one of those stories that you could have worked in that bridge to existing characters. You could have worked it in already, but I don't know.
Which one did he get off first? Between the Eternals, the New Gods, and the Inhumans. Which one did he get?
Oh, I think he got Eternals off first. But Inhumans was one of those that I think of those three, the Inhumans was the most successful, right?
Yeah. The New Gods gave us Darkseid over at DC. But really, that's the only one of the New Gods that anybody cares about. I mean, Barda shows up every now and again to fight Wonder Woman or something. Yeah. But overall, nobody wants to hear like the good guys of the like Mr. Miracle or what. Nobody cares. Nobody wants the good guy New Gods. Mother Box is interesting. And you got Darkseid and the Dark Side, and that's about all you got. But no, and I know they tied it in with the X-Men, and that just is another thing. Like the X-Men, when you start going on the outer space adventures, it starts losing. Like, to me, it's always supposed to be this allegory about suppressed peoples and stuff. But then when you go to outer space, like in the middle of the first season, when you go out to the Kree Shire Empire, and you're like, what is this? This is no relation to the core story of what the X-Men is supposed to be about. Where is this still an allegory about racism? I'm losing it now. Oh,
yep. Well aware of that. Eson, the Celestial, gave the powers to Apocalypse.
Yeah,
in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
and honestly, the Celestials have that. See, that's the thing. The Celestials have that bridge with the Guardians of the Galaxy already. I mean, Peter Quill is half Celestial. We did not need the Eternals to be the bridge to the Celestials. We didn't need that. You know what I mean? It made no sense. Okay. And at one point, I our good friend Jonathan said to me when I debated him on this, he said, well, they're doing this so that they can build up the idea of Galactus. Well, then they gave us Galactus, and it was nothing like the Galactus from the comics, and it was a very small and local Galactus, okay, which is something in the comic books, but not the only version in the comic books. And so to have a celestial story and think that that's the reason, once again, we didn't need that. We didn't need that in the MCU. So I don't know. If I had to pick, I would just say, that they've made some missteps. They've made some missteps for sure.
As far as like reimagined mythologies, Jack got it the closest to right that he was ever going to on the first try when you got Thor and the Asgardians, which are completely reimagined. It's not true to real Norse mythology. It's a totally reimagined thing, and it works. And it works so much better than all of the other attempts he made at doing it. He should have just stuck with that, because that one was working.
Yeah. Well, and he did. I mean, he did try, right? They did Hercules, and they did some other stuff. But I mean, for me, like for me on a personal level, I don't like when they do that. I don't like when they take the public domain, well-known mythological characters and turn them into superheroes. I've never liked that. Never gonna like that. And Thor, a little bit of an exception because, like you said, it's not really true to the real Greek mythology, Norse mythology. But I do feel like that there's plenty of originality out there that we haven't seen on the screen. Plenty of original characters we haven't seen on the screen, and to introduce someone like Hercules, which they did at the end of Love and Thunder, for example, not really something that I was jonesing for in the MCU. I'm just not. You know what I mean? So
I don't know what the Krakoa era. I just looked that up. That's 2019. So that's not something
past my book reading time. That's past my book reading time. That's for sure.
Wolverine history and comics. They can explain it. Movies. Jackman and Chris Evans should team up.
See, I'm done with Jackman. I really am. I mean,
till he's 90, Tim. Till he's 90.
I think he's just done playing the character. I do. I think that was the swan song. I think Deadpool and Wolverine was the swan song. He's never going to put that yellow suit on again. And we should all be happy that we got it that one time in the MCU. But yeah, I mean, and Evans, I don't know that Evans is even going to be Captain America in the new Avengers movie. You know what I mean? Because they said Steve Rogers will return. They didn't call him Captain America. So I don't know.
But I even though we didn't read any of the Krakoa era, I can posit a theory for you of why they got rid of that era. Reboots, continuity-wide reboots are like a drug, right? Once you take a little taste, a company can't stop. They just can't stop. And my core reading era is even though I'm older than Tim, it's about the same. I had a drawer full of comic books. I read them, I shuffled through them, but like really, I picked up Spider-Man #9 by McFarlane. It had Spider-Man and Wolverine on the cover. It was a story about Wendigo. I got it from the Stop and Go at the corner of Woodman and Burkhart. I rode my bicycle there, right? From the spinner rack. It was part 4 of a story, or I think it was 3 or 4 of the story of Spider-Man being in Canada, tracking the Wendigo, right? And when I realized it was part 4, I needed the first 3 parts, right? And that's when I discovered comic books. That's when I got into reading comics. It was 1990, I think. So I was 10. And that's when I became a huge comic book reader. Okay. And I read all the way through One More Day. Well, actually, I read a little bit of Brand New Day, and I was like, oh, they're really going to go with this. And then my heart was broken, and I stopped reading comics. So that's all the way through what? Early 2000s, late 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
DC had already started rebooting before I ever was a serious comic reader. Crisis on Infinite Earths was what, like 87, 88? Mm-hmm. And in the time that I was reading, they rebooted a couple more times. They had 0 Hour, and then they had like New 52. They were doing stuff all the time. They were rebooting just because once you start rebooting, you just got to reboot, man. That's just how you do it. Marvel had this great continuity the whole time I was a reader. It started with Fantastic Four #1, and it ran straight all the way through. And they didn't fiddle with any of it. What it was. When you read it, it was all one linear story. The first time they touched it was actually One More Day. And One More Day, they had, Spider-Man and Mary Jane make a deal with Mephisto so that their marriage was just erased from reality, and all of a sudden all those stories didn't happen, and we had this minor reboot so the ongoing continuity was still the same, but somehow all the stuff involving Spider-Man was slightly different because he was, what I'm saying? So now you've did a continuity within a reboot within your ongoing continuity, and then before you know it, Marvel started rebooting, and they've been like they did a full-on company-wide reboot. When was there? By then I had stopped reading, but I think was this new Secret Wars? Was that their first company-wide reboot?
You're talking about the 2015 run? You're talking about the 2015 run with Jonathan? It was Hickman,
with Hickman,
right? Hickman.
Yeah.
The Hickman run.
Is that a reboot?
That's a reboot. Yeah. That's a reboot.
So sure. That's the thing. They started company-wide rebooting in 2015, which means every 5 to 6 or 7 years, they will be rebooting now, because that's what DC has been doing ever since they did it with Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's a drug. You become addicted to rebooting, and that's all you know how to do is reboot.
It's just like the movie studios. It's the exact same thing. You get somebody new in charge, and they say, "How long have we been doing this story now? We've been doing this for like 7 years. I mean, why don't we just start over?" It's the exact same thing that happens when somebody comes into a movie studio and says, "Oh, we've been doing this. This is our 4th one of these movies. It's about time that we just take a break and start over, don't you think?" And so, there's a lot of reasons for it. And I think that's, sometimes it's good. I think sometimes a break and a reboot is good. Sometimes a break and a reboot just ends up taking something beloved and turning it into something that's not as beloved. Like, I loved what they did with the new X-Men reboot in 1991. That was one of my favorite runs, right? I love that. I love that run. But the thing that a lot of people loved about it is that there were new characters that were introduced. The team itself had kind of taken mold. The story had kind of molded into something that was completely different than it was in the Uncanny run. And so I do feel like, reboots can serve a purpose, and they can introduce, and generationally, this is the big thing, is generationally people feel like their storyline is the one that they really can cling to, right? Like that 1991 X-Men storyline is that's me. I'm right there, right? But a lot of people are going to tell you that's not their X-Men run. A lot of people are going to tell you it's the Astonishing run in the late 90s, or some of these X-Men runs that are more recent, right? So that it gives generations something to cling to. I'm with you, Dan. I'm not really a fan of it. I loved when everything was linear. It just got to the point where it was too much, right? And I think that's kind of where that it got to the point where it's too much to keep up with. If you've got 40 years of 7,000 characters trying to check every little detail to make sure it lines up.
Yeah, now it's like in '91 with X-Men #1, Lee and Claremont. That was a jumping on point, but not a complete. Like it was not a reboot. Like they were still pulling off the history. It was all still linear. But nowadays they destroy one universe, they start a whole nother one. You start over again, and you start over. And here the thing is, you don't end one 40-year continuity, reboot it, and then do another 40 years. You get addicted to it. You only go, like, you do one for 40 years, and then you do one for 10. And then after you do one for 10, the next one only goes for 5. And before you know it, you're getting like 1 or 2 years, and then you're like, we got to throw it all out and start again.
Yeah, the Claremont era is definitely the most popular amongst X-Men fans, and I can't speak for everybody else, but my favorite artist is Jim Lee. It's not even close.
Yeah. So Claremont, anyway. Claremont starts. Didn't he write Giant Size X-Men #1? Because the Claremont and Byrne era was like that. Claremont and Byrne gave you Dark Phoenix. It gave you, Wolverine. It gave you it's what made the X-Men, because before that, the original X-Men run was the Lee and Kirby, and that was actually one of the Lee Kirby creations. They were like one of the least popular Lee Kirby creations out there. They never really took off when it was, Marvel Girl. It wasn't Jean Grey. Marvel Girl, Cyclops, and Iceman, and Beast, when he was just like a dude with big feet instead of the blue furry guy we all know and love today. He was just some dude with big feet. Jack has designed some great things, but the original Beast was just kind of like
yeah. And that was the first one. That was the first Marvel character, I think, when they introduced it. They were just like, okay, his superpower is going to be his intelligence, and we're also going to give him big feet, right? But then it's just like, we can keep him smart, but let's make him look definitely different, not just big feet.
Yeah. They had the name Beasts. They're like, let's come up with a look that matches what his name is. And we think he'll take off a lot better. So, the Claremont's definitely the pinnacle of X-Men. I mean, again, I never read any of them because the X-Men just isn't. It's just not my thing, man. It's all. It's so. I think I am drawn more to individuals and the story of an individual. I need characters more than I need plot. I need to, who am I rooting for here? Like, who is my guy? Who is my person? And the X-Men has too much of a revolving door. You don't get to latch on to a character to pull you through, unless it's Charles, I guess. And then, but I get tired of him just sitting there talking with Magneto over and over again. It loses something for me.
I can only take so much philosophy in my superhero story. I mean, if we're going to get into deep single-spaced paragraphs about philosophy, just, I just want to see stuff blow up and lasers and all kinds, that's give my little 9-year-old brain something that it wants to see. So,
the philosophy needs to be more hidden. It needs to be in the subtext,
That's right. That's right.
But overall, I think this season, and I don't know if that's the popular opinion. Like, which are you liking this season more or less than the first season, Tim?
I if I had to honestly rate it right now, it's a push. I would honestly say I don't like one season better than the other. Would I tell you that I think that this episode is the best episode? No, I don't think that it is. So the fact that it's rated the highest doesn't really mean anything to me. It's just recency bias as far as I'm concerned. But I do think that it's not a bad show. I want people to understand, and we're not sitting here, we're not trashing the show. We're not saying that it's a terrible show. We're just saying there are some things that they could have done a little differently. And although we understand their timeline crunches and their deadlines and the fact that they didn't know if they were going to get picked up again, and a lot of that different stuff that factored into why they crammed so much into season 1, and while they're kind of taking their time with season 2, I feel like there were some decisions that they could have changed. So not a perfect show, but a good show, I guess, or a decent show.
I am liking season 2 so far better than season 1, and I'll just come right out and say I did not like season 1. There was just too many things that didn't make any sense. As an over 40-year-old man, I should not be watching a cartoon and every third episode going, wait a minute, what did I miss? Wait a minute, why? You know what I'm saying? Like I shouldn't be made to feel like I absolutely positively have missed something by the dialogue and the physics of a cartoon. That's not a good job. When you spend 4 or 5 episodes and everybody's super sad that Professor X is dead, and then it's revealed that he's alive and nobody reacts at all. I mean, no reacts. I mean, that's nuts. I can't let that go. It sticks in my craw. I can't, like, things like that. Like when you end an episode with Xavier trapped on the floor with a, special helmet that blocks his powers from working. If you end the episode with him stuck like that, and then the next episode the helmet's magically gone and we didn't see how that happened, I can't let it go. I won't let it go. That's just poor. That's just bad show making. You didn't run out of time. You made shitty decisions. That's just bad. They haven't done anything like that this season, so I'm going to give it more credit. I will say the animation has been top notch throughout both seasons, and the action sequences are very well done. It all flows really, really good. So there is a lot going on good there, and the voice acting I feel like is really good. I really like Nightcrawler. He's been fun. It's not the fact it's not all bad, even though I didn't enjoy the first season. I was watching the first season, like I was cursing Tim again because he made me watch season 2 of Born Again, and I was cursing you again for having to watch it. But the second season started off, it's better than the first for me. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Do you have any bold predictions? I made my bold prediction. Morph will turn into Uatu. He'll bring back Gambit.
I think we'll see Onslaught. I think we'll see Onslaught before the end of this season, and that's pretty much what I think we're gonna see. I think we're building towards that, and we're gonna see a big clash between Cable and Apocalypse. I think that's pretty obvious. That's coming as well. So anyway,
okay. All right. The Weapon X thing, is that going to happen, or do you think that might be like a spinoff? Is that going to be like a sideline?
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be this next episode, if it'll be a couple episodes from now. I don't know, but I think we will see that this season. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see how integral it is.
So anyway, next week, I guess we're doing this again. We're still talking X-Men next week.
Yeah, we'll do episode 5. We'll do episode 5 next week, and we'll do it as long as this show runs, and then we'll talk something else nerdy. I know we do have Spider-Man coming up here at the end of the month, and we're going to be doing that as well. So probably the week of, I don't know, Dan, we'll probably have to see about what we're going to do for that. If we're going to do another live review after, or what we're going to do, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. So
yeah, but yeah. Anyway, maybe next week we can find a true blue real fan to come on here with us and tell us why we're wrong and why it's
Jason was going to be here, and I'm pretty sure he's enjoying the show, so we'll see about Jason next week, and maybe poke around and see if Jared wants to join us for a week sometime, because I know Jared probably is enjoying this for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, Dan, that he has so many reference points that he just knows he can connect all the dots in his mind. So so
I could tell Jarrett that the X-Men are lame and watch his head explode.
Just be like, this isn't as good as anything DC's given me, and just watch him just go off. It'll be great.
You know what I think? I think Supergirl was way better.
He would hate it. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We appreciate the comments, and definitely keep it going this week. Let us know what you think in our comments after the video posts as well.
So, hey, Tim, guess what? OH!
IO, baby.